The laying of a wooden floor is only possible if the window and door frames have been fitted in order to waterproof the area and prevent any excess humidity. The concrete subfloor must be clean and free of dust or any other foreign substances, such as any residual lime, plasterwork or similar. The concrete subfloor should be evenly compressed. When the surface is hit with a mallet weighing 750 grams, no visible marks should be left, nor should there be any crumbling or dust particles forming. It is important to check the surface strength of the subfloor by scratching it with a suitable iron nail to form a series of squares. No deep cracks or crumbling or dust formation should occur. It is essential that the residual humidity of the subfloor is no more than 2% on concrete subfloors and 0.5% on anhydrite subfloors. Use an electric hygrometer to determine which part of the subfloor has the highest levels of humidity. And in this point, carry out a measurement with a carbide hygrometer. Extract a sample with a hammer and chisel which is representative of the entire thickness of the subfloor, discarding the surface level for at least 15 millimeters. Weigh the broken up and mixed up sample using a small set of accurately calibrated scales, taking care that the sample is not in contact with the air for too long. Place several steel balls, a file of pre-calibrated calcium carbide and the sample of extracted subfloor into the designated container. Close the container with a suitable lid equipped with a manometer and check the gasket. Shake vigorously for 5 minutes and wait for the pressure to stabilize within approximately 15 minutes before taking the manometer reading. If the reading reveals a percentage of humidity that is greater, then it is necessary to carry out a precautionary treatment of the subfloor with a suitable primer. The laying of the parquet is only possible if the room temperature is no less than 15 degrees Celsius. The relative air humidity should be measured with a suitable instrument and should be approximately 50%. In addition, it is necessary to measure the humidity of the wood to be laid with an electric hygrometer, testing at least 4 or 5 sample pieces. The level of humidity must be between 7 and 11%. Primer PA400 is a consolidating resin designed for dust-free cement subfloors and for the isolating treatment against any residual humidity in floors and damp walls. The floor foundation to be treated should be compressed and free of foreign substances. Any defect in the surface, such as flaws, cracks or depressions, should be pre-treated prior to the application of the primer PA400. By mixing fine-grained sand with the primer, a synthetic mortar is obtained that can be applied onto the subfloor with a plastering trowel. The primer PA400 should be diluted exclusively with the dedicated thinner D40 or D21 in a ratio of 1:1 or 2:1 according to the absorption of the subfloor. The diluted primer PA400 should be applied with a paintbrush or roller in generous amounts for the first layer. Allow to dry for at least 3 to 4 hours, ideally in conditions of 20 to 25 degrees Celsius with 60 to 70% of relative humidity. Apply the second coat of the primer PA400 diluted to a ratio of 2:1, using a sufficient amount so that no excess amount of the product remains on the surface. Apply a third coat if necessary. The maximum amount of time allowed between one coat and the next must not be more than 12 hours in order to guarantee a perfect connection between the various applications. To obtain a stronger adhesion of the glue, sprinkle a layer of fine sand on the last coat of the PA400 while it is still fresh. After it has dried and before gluing, remove the excess sand that has not become attached to the surface. Pelprin PL6 is a two-component epoxy polyurethane adhesive catalyzed in a ratio of 9.4 is to 0.6. For the preparation, pour component B into the container of component A and mix if possible with an electric stir for several minutes until the mixture becomes a smooth paste. Under normal conditions, the product obtained in this way should be used within 2 hours. With a suitable serrated trowel, carefully apply the paste to the subfloor and then lay the wood panels. The sides of the panels must not be glued in order to allow the regular subdivision caused by any contracting or shrinking during the stabilization process.
WB Mono MS is a silane adhesive specifically for gluing hardwood and pre-finished wood floors on cement subfloors. Simply open the packaging and the product is ready to use. Remove the aluminium protective film and it can be applied with an appropriate number 6 spatula. The subfloor must be compact, dry, clean, and free from flaking particles such as paints, dust, wax, etc. WB Mono MS must not be thinned, and its pot life under normal conditions is about 40 to 60 minutes.
L100 is a solvent-based bonding resin used for the shaving and filling of wood floors. The product should be mixed with a ratio of approximately 1:1, with wood particles that should be of the same essence as that to be treated, taken from the finest smoothing stage in order to obtain an easily malleable paste. Considering the wide variety of wood essences on the market, it is always advisable to carry out tests to check any variations in the shade of the wood to be treated. Once the product has been mixed, it should be applied using a flat spatula, and a complete shaving of the entire floor should be carried out, if necessary, adding some more resin to maintain the correct consistency. If there are any cracks of a significant size, the operation should be repeated several times. Under normal conditions, the drying time is approximately 30 minutes, at the end of which it is possible to proceed to the sanding stage. The smoothing of the wood floor consists in processes of leveling and smoothing of the surface in order to prepare it for the subsequent finishing treatments. The process is carried out with appropriate sandpapering machinery fitted with abrasive sheets. The first stage, known as the roughing out phase, gets rid of most of the obvious irregularities and is performed using a block with coarse grain, usually 36. The treatment of the floor surfaces must be carried out in parallel lines, working from right to left or vice versa, depending on the wheel arrangement of the sandpapering machine. The overlapping of the smoothing lines and the direction of the work are important so that the wheels of the sandpapering machine run on a part of flooring that has already been smoothed. After passing over the whole surface in one direction, the action should be repeated with the same level of abrasive grain at an angle of 60 degrees to the first time. The accuracy of the roughing out is very important, as this cannot be corrected during the subsequent smoothing operations. Once the process of roughing out has been concluded, the abrasive sheet is replaced by one with a finer grain, usually a grain 60, and the smoothing stage begins. This process involves passing over the surface several times before changing to a grain 100, which gives a much more regular surface. The surface is now sufficiently smooth and level to allow the operations of filling with stucco or shaving to be carried out. The areas along the edges, next to the corners, and those areas that the sandpapering machine cannot reach remain untreated. For this operation, an edge smoother with variable rotation is used. The abrasive sheets to be used must be of the same grain as those used by the sandpapering machine in the various stages involved between the roughing out and smoothing phases. Sandpapering is to get rid of any excess substances left behind after the process of filling with stucco and to further improve the surface of the flooring so that it is ready for the finishing treatments. A single rotary brush is normally used for this operation, with a disc attachment for the sandpaper or wire gauze with a very fine grain, in order to obtain a uniform, plain, smooth and clean surface. An edge sanding machine is used for the areas close to the walls, the corners and the doorways. Following this process, a powerful vacuum cleaner should be used to clean thoroughly all the surfaces, paying particular attention to the edges. The final result of the varnishing process is largely dependent on the perfect cleaning of the surfaces and the adjacent areas, leaving a surface without unwanted lumps or specks of dirt sealed below the surface.
Fondo WB. Preparation of the surface. Varnish must always be applied on a perfectly smooth surface free from flaking particles such as oils, waxes or various deposits. Clean the whole surface with a vacuum cleaner before application, and then with an anti-static cloth to remove any dust. Fondo WB is a mono-component water-based primer. To prepare the product, shake the container and pour only the quantity of primer required for the application into a clean pot. Use clean tools when applying, roller brushes, and distribute the product evenly and not excessively, about 80 to 90 grams per square meter. Applying the product evenly and quickly is recommended to avoid overlapping and marks. We would like to remind you not to sand Fondo WB directly, but only after the first hand of varnish, which must be applied when the primer is completely dry. We advise to not apply the product in damp places, to avoid air drafts when applying it, and to never leave the product in cold places before its application.
Products are a combination of fluids that form a film once they have been allowed to dry after application, that protects, hardens, and waterproofs the surface of the flooring. F21 is a two-component polyurethane filler with a high filling potential. The main purpose of the filler is to create uniform surfaces, the partial closure of pores, and the isolation and the strong adherence of the varnished layer. F21 is prepared by using clean containers in which only the desired quantity of the product is mixed. The components are mixed in a ratio of 2:1 and are left to react for several minutes. The surface to be treated should be perfectly smooth and free of foreign substances. Clean equipment should be used for the application, roller or paintbrush, applying a layer with a uniform thickness of approximately 90 to 100 grams per meter. It is recommended that a gas mask be worn to protect against toxic fumes and to avoid applying product in damp conditions.
Preparation of the surface. Varnish must always be applied on a perfectly smooth surface free from flaking particles such as oils, waxes or various deposits. Clean the whole surface with a vacuum cleaner before application and then with an anti-static cloth to remove any dust. Ice is a water-based bicomponent varnish specifically for wood floors. To prepare the product, shake the containers and mix component B homogeneously into component A, in a clean pot keeping to the catalysis ratio. Let the mix react for about 10 minutes before applying it. Use clean tools when applying, roller brushes, and distribute the product evenly and not excessively, about 90 to 100 grams per square meter. Applying the product evenly and quickly is recommended to avoid overlapping and marks. We advise not to apply the product in damp places, to avoid air drafts when applying it, and never to leave the product in cold places before its application.
Adetac S is an acrylic adhesive in watery dispersion with high initial grab and is suitable for gluing LVT flooring, coverings in homogeneous PVC, linoleum, wall-to-wall carpeting, and non-woven needle punch carpeting. To apply the product, spread it on the subfloor using a specific and appropriate notched trowel only. Wait a few moments for the adhesive to dry partially. It should be as dry as possible, but still capable of wetting the back of the covering. Lay the covering by applying pressure evenly over the entire surface to push out any trapped air bubbles. The product has a working time of 15 to 30 minutes, and final hardening takes 24 to 48 hours. Pelpren PL6G is a biocomponent epoxy polyurethane adhesive suitable for gluing LVT flooring, PVC coverings, rubber floors, sports grounds made of rubber conglomerates, and running tracks. This tough and flexible product is also suited for indoor and outdoor use on absorbent flooring such as traditional screeds, concrete subfloors with heating and cooling systems, as well as on non-absorbent surfaces such as marble, ceramic, and cured asphalt. Before application, ensure there is an adequate vapor seal barrier, and always measure the moisture in the subfloor using appropriate instruments. The subfloor's moisture level must be less than 2% and the ambient temperature between 15 and 30 degrees centigrade. The substrate must be clean, compact, dry, free from dust and loose particles such as traces of concrete or plaster. To use, pour component B into the container of component A, mixing it well with an electric mixer to obtain a homogeneous and uniform paste. Wait a few minutes and then spread the product on the subfloor using a specific and appropriate notched trowel. Lay the selected covering by applying pressure evenly over the entire surface to push out any trapped air bubbles. The product has a working time of 60 to 90 minutes, and final hardening takes 12 to 18 hours.